We are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm Ben Omni-Ivor with Legacy Flight Academy. This week, or I should say today, on this series we got for virtual P.A.R, we're with Elizabeth City State University doing a drone experience week. Special guest today, Major Taryrece Culberson-Swint. Did I get that correct? Sweet. He is former MQ9 Reaper pilot, currently getting requalified back in the KC-135, and I think in the future here, probably going to the KC-46 Pegasus. Happy to have him on board. Happy to have Elizabeth State University on board. Without further ado, I'll let you take it away, and I'll be in the background.
Sounds good, thanks. I have hosting. All right. Share screen.
Yeah, you're good to go.
All right, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Definitely am super happy to be a part of the Legacy Flight Academy experience here and kind of share my story and my experiences and hopefully give someone some guidance or maybe a little motivation as well. So a little background on me. As you see name on the screen there, call sign is Ghost Rider. We may or may not get to that throughout the briefing / presentation today. My contact info if anyone wants to reach out to me. So a little background on me, like I said before, flew MQ9s, also flew MQ1s, which is the Predator, more of an older model of the UAS system. Flew KC-135s before that, going back to fly KC-135s and hopefully the KC-46 in the next year or so. And also fly for SkyWest currently as a CRJ pilot with them, been with them for about 6 or so months now. Big picture, what we're looking to do today is kind of talk about my background. We'll go through the normal, what I've done, what was important to me, how did I get to that point, and then hopefully we'll end up with the Q&A to close out any questions that you all may have. All right, so to start off, just a little piece of motivation. We're gonna run this video really quick. It's an MQ9 mission video, so hopefully it'll give a glimpse into kind of what the MQ9 mission is, MQ9 being the Reaper. And kind of what we do on a daily basis, but it's going to be kind of top level. We'll dig or delve down a little further.
Miles east of Ross Triumph, Church Village. Gas check will be.
Oh, we're just getting a white screen.
Tiger 40, flight level 280, request entry into the ROS. We are as fragged. Standing by.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Welcome to remotely piloted air travel. By the mid-1990s, the technology had sufficiently developed to allow a plane to be flown by remote from the other side of the world. The RQ-1 was deployed as the Air Force's first major remotely piloted intelligence asset. In the summer of 2000, an RQ-1 found Osama bin Laden, but it was unarmed and could only watch. A year later, the Air Force decided we should have weapons. We've been flying around the clock ever since. Welcome to the grind. Welcome to shift work. We don't spend the days dogfighting and prepping for wars that might happen someday. We are fighting the war that's happening now. When you're done training, every hour you fly is on the line, in combat, engaging the enemy. Welcome to close air support and protecting American lives on the ground. Welcome to a new kind of fight. This isn't yesterday's war.
Taryrece, can you hear me?
Urgency.
Okay.
The ability to find and track a faithful enemy hiding among a civilian population is paramount. Precise strikes are demanded. Welcome to real, measurable impact. We've reduced the enemy to shambles. They live on the run, hiding in caves, because they know we're there, and they know we're hunting them. They fear us because they know we won't stop. So long as a terrorist threat exists, we will be there to fight it. They don't fear the jets they can hear coming from miles away. They fear the Reapers that are always there, always overhead.
Oh, Omni just told me that you all couldn't see the screen. Let's try this one more time. Can you all see the screen now, Omni?
Yeah, we can see it now. I don't know what it was doing before. We could hear it, but it was just showing a white screen.
Okay, so can you see it there? The video.
No, it just shows the slide still.
Interesting. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Tell me what you got now on your side.
Yeah, that's probably gonna work. I can see the YouTube page.
Cross, triumph,
Sorry.
turkey goes. Dash 70. Dagger 40, flight level 280, request entry into the ROS. We are at frag. Standing by, 9 line.
Welcome to remotely piloted aircraft. By the mid-1990s, the technology had sufficiently developed to allow a plane to be flown by remote from the other side of the world. The RQ-1 was deployed as the Air Force's first major remotely piloted intelligence asset. In the summer of 2000, an RQ-1 found Osama bin Laden, but it was unarmed and could only watch. A year later, the Air Force decided we should have weapons. We've been flying around the clock ever since. Welcome to the grind. Welcome to shift work. We don't spend the days dogfighting and prepping for wars that might happen someday. We are fighting the war that's happening now. When you're done training, every hour you fly is on the line, in combat, engaging the enemy. Welcome to close air support and protecting American lives on the ground. Welcome to a new kind of fight. This isn't yesterday's war. This is a counterinsurgency. The ability to find and track a faceless enemy hiding among a civilian population is paramount. Precise strikes are demanded. Welcome to real, measurable impact. We've reduced the enemy to shambles. They live on the run, hiding in caves, because they know we're there. They know we're hunting them. They fear us because they know we won't stop. So long as a terrorist threat exists, we will be there to fight it. They don't fear the jets they can hear coming from miles away. They fear the reapers that are always there, always overhead, watching, listening, waiting for them. And above all, they fear the sound of our Hellfire missiles, because it's the last thing they will ever hear. Welcome to the future of the United States Air Force. We're not going anywhere. The Air Force doesn't move backwards. Pilots, sensor operators, you are in high demand. Make no mistake about it, these are not drones. Remotely piloted aircraft are only as effective as the men and women at the controls, and we're proud to have you among our ranks. Welcome to the forefront. Welcome to the war.
7 miles east of Ross Triumph.
All right, let me know if you have the presentation back up.
Yeah, everything looks good.
Okay, thanks. All right, so that's probably one of the best introductions to what the MQ9 really does for the fight, and we'll kind of talk to you all as I get to that portion after we kind of give a quick intro to me about how we expect people to operate. The biggest thing I would say about the MQ9 community is we take individuals, be it a senior airman or a younger airman, A1C, immediately out of training, and also lieutenants immediately out of training as well. We're talking from their initial qualification training, which some of you all may have heard about yesterday from another one of my counterparts, immediately into the fight. There is no one directly over your shoulder preparing or watching you, making sure that you execute properly. So there's no co-pilot, senior captain pilot type mindset, or sometimes in the fighter community, you have the wingman concept there. For us, it's immediately you're out the gate by yourself and expected to execute to the highest levels and standards of the community. With that being said, the MQ9 is unique in that aspect because you do have the immediate reach back, and we'll kind of talk what that looks like in the actual unit for any MQ9 operations or any MQ1 or RQ4 as well. Cool. So how did I get to this point? For me specifically, humble beginnings. Grew up in Georgia. Was born in Atlanta. Grew up about 45 minutes south of Atlanta. Moved back up here when I was slightly out of high school there. But from the age of around 8 or 9, I've always been fascinated with stars, astrology. Wanted to become an astronaut since that age, and becoming a pilot was kind of a stepping stone or something that led me to hopefully becoming an astronaut was the goal when I was younger. So a couple of the pictures that you actually see up here, in the middle you'll see the famed Tuskegee Airmen, which is near and dear to my heart. One thing that some people don't know, so I only applied to one university, and I really kind of waited until the last minute. It was my senior year, February of my senior year. Don't recommend that you actually do this, but waited until that point, and my uncle, who was actually a Vietnam vet, was who really was enthused and also a huge follower of the Tuskegee Airmen. Mentioned them to me one day, asked me if I ever heard of them as far as options for me to go to school. And he was like, well, you know, Tuskegee University is down about 2 hours away. So I did a little research there, and we talked about it a little more. And from that point, I was hooked. So for me, I applied to only Tuskegee. Luckily, I got in. Otherwise, I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing now. So the Tuskegee Airman legacy is near and obviously dear to my heart. Graduated there in 2008. I was an aerospace science and engineering major then. And went on later to get my master's in space studies with concentration in aerospace science. So everything that I've pretty much done has kind of been themed around the astrology, aerospace, astronautics, aeronautics theme, if you will. So the biggest thing for me coming out of Tuskegee University, it had been a long period of time before or since we actually had any pilots come out. I graduated in 2008, like I said before. So for me, I felt the hope or the opportunities of actually getting a pilot slot or going to pilot training was slim to none. However, everything for some reason aligned for me. The stars aligned, I think, and I'm a true believer that everything happens for a reason. So I went off from Tuskegee University to pilot training down in Del Rio, Texas, at Laughlin Air Force Base, which is where I actually met Aaron Jones, for you all who may know him. Prior to actually starting UPT, I was on casual status down there, so essentially doing odd jobs for the base, but also went to initial flight training or screening and the DA-20, which you all see in the top left corner there. Flew that for about 20 hours. This was my first time ever flying an aircraft, so for me, the learning curve was somewhat steep. Never had an opportunity to fly an aircraft or really experience flight at all prior to going to that training that was up in Pueblo, Colorado. So if you all are ever wondering, hey, if there's opportunity, how well will I do in pilot training just because I've never done this before, this is where Legacy Flight Academy and other organizations are key to your success. Because I'll be 100% honest, especially when we start talking about the T6, it was a struggle for me. Not from the academic standpoint, more so from just learning how to fly the aircraft. So I flew about 19 hours in the DA-20 there, and I went back to Laughlin Air Force Base where I started the intense portion of undergraduate pilot training via the T6, which started with academics. Starting off with academics, I had no issues at all, but the real challenge for me began when we got to the aircraft and trying to land and just fly the aircraft in general. So one big thing that I'll probably mention again throughout the presentation is failure. The one thing that I personally learned in life, and especially through my journey as an aviator, is failure is acceptable, it's normal. Failure without effort, however, that is unacceptable. So one thing that you really have to get comfortable with in life, and this is me speaking to a younger me and also you all as well, is to be comfortable with failure. There's nothing wrong with it, and don't allow yourself to beat yourself up or be stuck at that moment of failure. It's really about pressing forward and moving on from that point and really taking the lessons learned about, okay, what could I have done better instead of focusing on what you did not do right the first time. So from T6s moved on to T1s. After that, flew that out of Laughlin for about 6 months. So both the aircraft split, the T6 and the T1 time in UPT are 6 months, and that's including the academic and sim portions as well there. Out of T1s, initially I was expecting to go to the KC-135, which just so happened to work out for me. But going back to the T6, I've always wanted to fly fighters. Actually, the F-15E has always been one of my favorite aircraft. But like I said before, T6 phase was actually a struggle for me. So went on to T1 to fly heavier aircraft, which was the KC-135 for me. out at Seymour Johnson in North Carolina. The picture you see here, the tanker, the large aircraft, that is the KC-135 Stratotanker. Flew that for about 6 years or so out of Seymour Johnson in North Carolina. Had a couple deployments out of there to various locations, mostly to RUD in Qatar, which is east of Saudi Arabia. And also deployed a few times to Turkey as well, all flying missions over Iraq or Afghanistan there. And I've also had plenty of TDYs. So the one thing that I will say about the KC-135 is I love the base options. There are plenty of locations you can go live and fly the KC-135, and you also get to see a lot of the world. My last trip in this aircraft, which was back in 2016, 4 or 5 day trip, went to Italy, Spain, Portugal. I've had trips where I've broken and stayed in Hawaii for 7 days, just enjoying the space there. So a lot of great options. Definitely love the KC-135, and I'll always be near and dear to my heart as my first major weapon system or first major aircraft outside of training. And this is what we're really here to talk about, the MQ-1 and MQ-9. These are aircraft that I both flew back at Creech Air Force Base in Las Vegas. The transition from the KC-135 to the UAS systems that you see there was not of my own choosing. To be honest, I initially thought I was going to continue flying the KC-135 for another assignment or two. However, life situations happened, and I was reassigned to go fly unmanned aerial vehicles, which you see there. With that being said, the UAS to the top left, the MQ9 Predator, was the first one that I flew. You can see there's one missile currently being shown on there. We could carry up to 2. Essentially, that is more of an ISR platform. Yes, it is capable of engaging, but that's kind of its secondary mission, if I would say, out of the multi-roles that it actually has. The MQ9 Reaper that you see to the bottom right is the last UAS or unmanned aerial system that I flew. Definitely more capable, faster, higher performance. Also definitely carries more munitions as well. Can carry up to 4 Hellfires. Also GPS guided bombs, or GPS guided, yes, GPS guided bombs, also laser guided bombs, and also the laser guided missiles that you currently see on the aircraft there. So the transition for me. The training location, which you all may have been informed about for the UAS systems, is currently at Holloman, New Mexico, for these two specifically. So I went there, did training for about 4 or 5 months, and went on to Creech Air Force Base out in Las Vegas, where I actually flew this. The MQ-1 I flew for about 9 months before my unit phased out and started transitioning over to the MQ-9, and also the unit shut down at that point. Transitioned to a new unit. The biggest thing that I've really gained from the MQ-9 community is, I know a lot of people tell you bloom where planted. And I don't think I fully understood it. It was kind of cliche to say, but I fully understand it now. You really do make whatever situation the outcome that you want it to be, regardless of whether you want to be there or not. And we'll kind of talk about that when I get to my lessons learned at the end. So went there, flew as a mission commander, which everyone flies as a mission commander initially as far as on the pilot side. We also have sensor operators as well, which help us with actually finding, acquiring targets, and working the other sensor type platforms that we have available to identify nefarious activity there. A lieutenant coming out, and this is an individual who is commissioned, will immediately go into, after training, flying this as a mission commander, as I said before. They do not have any additional direct support, i.e. anyone in the cockpit, or as we call it, the GCS, ground control station. With that being said, they actually are expected to, even if their supervision or leadership is not directly there, still be able to engage targets. So we'll take a step back here. So the primary way of engaging a target that we talk about is through a JTAC, so a Joint Terminal Air Controller. The individual will tell you, okay, I want you to execute this target with your missiles or your bombs at this specific time via this means of execution. That is a lot for an individual to take on, especially when your adrenaline's pumping the first time that you actually engage. But the thing is, you are trained to that level, and you should be eventually comfortable executing autonomously or by yourself solely. So after doing that for a little while, just as a mission commander, moved on to be an instructor pilot there for the system. The community as itself, culture-wise, is heavily driven from the fighter community. So our briefs can be long, especially when you're going through upgrade for instructor, and eventually I became an evaluator in the UAS community there. But briefings are important because of the execution that we're actually doing. We're not just going out doing surveillance. We're actually going out looking for individuals. And sometimes we're not just engaging stationary targets. We're engaging targets that are moving within urban environments, cars that are moving throughout cities. We're tracking these individuals, and we have a small window. So that's where precision in execution comes in. That precision in execution comes from great training and being dedicated to your craft. After that, swap units and continue to execute in the MQ9. The overall daily execution, which is something that a lot of people will ask about, what is a normal day for a UAS pilot? The community has transitioned a lot over the past few years. When I first heard about the UAS community before I went there, I heard that, oh, you're going to be sitting there flying for 12 hours straight. You're just going to be sitting there looking at the screen. Nothing's going to happen. We are past that point, and it is definitely more dynamic now. I know plenty of individuals who, actually I know one individual specifically, brand new lieutenant, first time flying an aircraft by itself, engaged within the first hour of flying by itself. So that's how fast things really happen. So we go from that community of we're sitting here watching an individual or surveying an area for hours at a time, up to 10 hours at a time, to now it's more of a, you'll probably be in the seat for about 6 hours sometime, and that's more when you're working at night. Sometimes we have different shifts that most individuals will work a rotating shift where they transition every 6 or so weeks, give or take what unit you're with, from a day till they swing to a mid schedule, which really just means you come in at 7 in the morning, the next one you can come in at 3 in the afternoon, or you can come in at approximately 11 at night. And then you could be working throughout the night until 7, 8 in the morning in that case. So the hours are still can be somewhat long, but most of the individuals have strong enough, or most of the units have strong enough manning to support reduced hours. On average, if you're working day shift, i.e. you're coming in at 7-ish in the morning, you're only going to be probably flying 4 hours on average per day, which actually is not bad. It goes by really quick, especially when you're fully engaged with a mission and there's something dynamic going on, i.e. you're following a specific individual. The other side of it, which is what my unit mostly did, was what we consider close air support. So that's CAS. In that environment, you're essentially helping ground forces. So I also learned a lot about our joint fight. So I worked a lot with the Marine, the Army as a whole to execute a joint package. So individuals on the ground going in looking for a certain individual or clearing a certain area that may be considered hostile. At some point, they may run into a group of individuals, our enemies, that they have to engage, and that's kind of where we come in. We're there to be the eyes and potentially the ears as well, to make sure that there is no potential ambush that's going to happen, looking ahead, also watching their back there as well. And if they ever get into a situation, because we do have a long, what we call LORDA time, or ability to stay airborne, we're able to immediately execute and support them in that capacity as well. So ultimately, it's about the MQ9 or the UAS system is about saving lives and protecting lives. If it's not in the direct, immediate capacity, protecting lives in the future from individuals that may be a threat to our country or our interests. So normal day outside of that, you still have your normal job where you may be doing additional duties around the unit. But for most individuals, this platform specifically is really about honing those tactical skills. So how am I going to execute my next strike if I ever get into that situation? How am I going to better provide surveillance to my unit that I'm actually supporting? How am I going to get them better information? How am I going to facilitate that information faster? How can I work as a joint team to make sure that the individuals on the ground are safe and they come home to their families? At the end of the day, we as UAS pilots are in a safer environment most of the time, which we'll talk about the other side of it. So we operate remotely via satellite. That is what we call the MCE portion, the mission component or mission crew element there. Those individuals, like myself, were in Las Vegas or some part of the country that we were not actually, the aircraft was not physically in. So I could be in Las Vegas and actually executing in Afghanistan, supporting individuals on the ground there. There is another component of individuals where they would deploy, and those are the LRE, so the launch recovery element. They would take the plane off or land the aircraft, and we would do a swap, if you will, via satellite, where we would take control from those individuals. But still, overall, a low threat because they're not directly in the fight. They're more so on the outskirts of the area of execution. So that's kind of how the overall mission works for the MQ9. Other things I would definitely say about the mission there is nothing more rewarding than when a JTAC, like I say, a Joint Terminal Air Controller, gives you a call or calls your unit, because at one point I was Chief of Weapons, which is the individual who generally coordinates or discusses missions with the unit, or also develops the best way for us to execute a mission, and also keeps the individuals trained for unique type missions as well. But the most important or the best feeling is when someone calls the unit, like, you know what, you saved our life today. That execution was great. That really helped us out. We were able to push forward and make sure that no troops were injured, or you literally just from an ambush where, you know, we're being gunned down by individuals on the opposing team there, and you immediately saved all of our lives. And we've had to execute where we literally dropped missiles within feet or meters of our friendly forces, but that precise execution that we provide is something that is so key to be able to save someone who is literally across the street from an enemy that's firing on them and they cannot get out for whatever reason. So, all right, so we talked about a few things there as far as how I actually got to the MQ9 community. We talked a little bit about the failure is acceptable, and that's something that I really learned through UPT. But like I said before, failure without effort is not acceptable. Seymour Johnson, when I was flying the KC-135, provided a huge introspective piece for me. The one thing that I wanted there, initially I went there, and this is just how most pilots or individuals who are in a rated career field, or actually anyone who's in the military in general operates. A lot of times we are very competitive. But I had to get past the point of being like I'm competing against everyone else that's around me and realize that I'm really in competition with myself. And my goal for the past probably 10 years of my life has really been to beat myself on a daily basis. What that really means is every day that I go to execute, it's about me being better than I was the previous day, not necessarily me just facing the individual that I'm working with to be competitive with them. So, like I said, moving on from the KC-135 to Seymour Johnson on to Preach, where I was flying the UAS systems, the biggest lesson learned there is it's not always what you do, but how you do it. As I said before, leaving the KC-135 was not my personal choice. It happened. I went over to the community thinking that I would never get back to flying manned aircraft, and that was for me what I always wanted to do and what I wanted to continue doing. But I took that bloom where you're planted mindset and really went there to do my best and beat myself daily, which is how I eventually became an instructor and an evaluator pilot within the community. So if there's nothing else that you all take from my journey personally, is you are going to fail. Trust me. And if you can ask anyone who knew me at pilot training, I probably went to more potential elimination rides than anyone else they know. But it wasn't about that for me. It was about, okay, even if this is my last ride, I'm going to go in and execute and do my best. If it doesn't work out for me, then fine, but I cannot leave anything on the table saying that, you know what, I wish I would have done better. I wish I would have studied more. I wish I would have gave a little more effort. At the end of the day, I had to be confident and comfortable knowing that I had left everything on the table and done all that I could personally do. And at that point, it's out of your hands. Cool. But those are the big points. So I'm going to kind of open it up for a Q&A there, because it's less about me and really about what you all can take away from this.
I dig it. That was awesome. I know you got one at least queued up in the Q&A section there at the bottom for you.
Cool. So it says, can you all actually see my screen? Did I stop sharing?
You're good.
Okay. As a pilot with experience in Georgia military and now commercial pilot, how do you see the industry changing, and what do you recommend to young pilots to align their own pursuits towards earning their own needs? So the industry now, due to COVID, obviously, is in a very difficult position. The biggest thing that I have always done that it seems to be different than what some of my peers have done, because they've come to me asking for advice to how do I prepare myself. I am a huge advocate of being a student of research. And when I say that, I mean, I take the initiative generally before asking anyone any questions. I take the initiative to go seek the information myself. So if I've ever had a question about, okay, how do I prepare myself for getting ready for an interview or something like that, I'm going to more likely go find a book to do my own research. So at least I can bring a small amount of knowledge to the discussion, so my questions can be more targeted. So that's the biggest thing I would say for you to do at this point. Make sure that you're doing your own research, and also that you're keeping in contact with a mentor that can give you the most up-to-date and current information on the industry as a whole and where it is. The other thing that you can do, and that I would recommend anyone do, is always stay prepared. I recently transitioned from active duty to the reserves. But I have had my resume for probably 5 years, and I've always tweaked it. So I had my resume together. I've had my log books, all information that will make me, or all required information to be eligible for that one phone call that I've always waited for to hopefully go to a major airline. Is always prepared. So I'm never reactive, I'm always proactive. So if you keep those two things in mind, being proactive, being a student of research, and keeping a mentor close by, you'll definitely be on the right path. So next question, do you have a story that sticks out that you'd like to share? How do UASs prepare you for the airlines? So I'm gonna answer the first part. Actually, you know what, let's answer the second part about how it prepared me for the airlines, and then we'll go back to a story. So the UAS community prepared me for the airlines through precision and an ability or a desire to always look for the details. And when I say that, I'm talking about the precision and execution that comes along with the tactical community of the UAS RPA community. So I did not get to the point of becoming chief of weapons just because the slot opened up. It was more so because I was putting in the time, the effort to learn the details of how can I execute, how can I put a missile on a specific target. I was spending that time studying. How that translates over to the airlines is, for me, I was putting that additional time and energy that I put into executing as a RPA pilot. I was also putting that same time and energy into reading the regulations and becoming versed and aware of what the airlines required of me and what they would need whenever I got to that point. So, example, finding books on, because I had been out of the actual manned flying community for 4 years, so finding books that would keep me fresh and sharp on airline regulations, flight regulations, IFR regulations. So it was really more so about how in depth I had to know my material, knowledge, and tactics that really translated over to the airlines if there was nothing else. Story-wise, so on the first slide, you all may have saw that my call sign was Ghostwriter. So I'm not going to recommend this, and I generally don't tell this story to too many people, but I think it's a funny story. So the call sign Ghostwriter comes from essentially Ghost Ride the Whip, for whoever is a West Coast music fan there. So in short, we have a capability in the MQ9 and most other UASs where you can actually pull up the feed to other individuals who are pushing to the network. So when pushing to the network, one of my close friends who went through the initial qualification training for the UAS system with me was actually getting ready to engage a mobile target, so a vehicle which was actually traveling down this road at a high rate of speed. So me and my sensor operator, who is to my right, we're looking at the feed and we're like, oh, okay, he looks like he's getting ready to engage. We pull up his audio as well, and we're listening to the JTAC pass him a 9-line to engage this target. At the same time, we're realizing, okay, he's turning in, he doesn't have his laser on. And in order to engage the Hellfire missile, you need to have laser tracking capability. So I immediately, and this is with the autopilot on, I immediately hop up, run out the door of our cockpit, because we're literally just separated by doors down the hallway, run into his cockpit and scream, laser, laser. At that point, he had already gotten the laser on, and he actually ended up getting the call sign LITO, which is laser is technique only. He got the laser on, he did miss the target. The vehicle at the last moment turned down a road that they were not expecting, missed the target. No one was harmed or injured, no individuals that were non-combatants or anything. But from that, they called me, they gave me the call sign of Ghost Ride Whip for essentially leaving my controls there and running down the hall. So. From 7, you mentioned mentors. How do you find them? What is the relationship like? So let's address that piece before we go on. So mentors, you can find a mentor anywhere. You can find a mentor, and a mentor, I apologize, does not have to look like you. A mentor doesn't have to do the same job as you. A mentor doesn't necessarily have to be an individual who is more senior in rank or position than you either. I have had mentors who are my peers that are in a different career field. One of my closest mentors, and I used to tell her this all the time, was an individual who was in force support, so essentially a personnelist, because she was wise beyond her years. Had a lot of wealth of information to help me grow as an officer, so I was not only focused on execution as a pilot, but it also opened my scope or aperture to actually understand how the Air Force operated as a whole. So that's the one thing. So remember, you can find a mentor anywhere. It's about somebody that you have high aspirations for. You feel like they can give you some guidance. And also sometimes it can be a peer mentor where you bounce ideas off of each other as well. But the relationship piece is really a two-way street. Being a mentor and a mentee requires that both individuals engage. I can give you information, and this is something that I'm huge on. So anyone can be a mentor, not everyone can be a sponsor. Me being a mentor is giving you advice, guidance, and helping you out in whatever aspect that you may need assistance with. An individual that's a sponsor can be hard to find, because that individual is actually putting their name and attaching it to you, saying that, hey, I vouch for this person specifically. So that's a little hard to find, but mentors are all around. You just have to reach out to them. And sometimes it's just about being bold enough to be like, hey, you know what, will you be my mentor? And actually saying that, because I haven't done that before as well. What tricks? So I have had several mentors, just to recap and answer all the questions here. I have had several mentors at one time at different points in my career for different things. Like I said, I've had mentors outside of my career field. I've had mentors specific to my career field. I've had mentors specific to my aircraft as well. And those who just give me general aviation advice, especially when I was going through pilot training and different initial qualification training courses. Mentors have definitely been beneficial. Like I said before, I really struggled with the landings and initial pilot training, and also just going through UAS training as well. The difference between how that aircraft operated versus a traditional manned aircraft. So you can have mentors for your entire life that help you guide you throughout your entire career, or mentors for a season, if you will. So someone asks, can you expand on the failure without effort? When I say failure without effort, what I'm saying is there are times where you will be met with obstacles that for you specifically in your time, your situation where you are in life may prove to be difficult. At this point, it's about the effort that you put forward and being at a point to say, okay, I have given everything and done everything I can to be successful in this venture. If it doesn't work out, that's fine. because like I said before, you will fail at something in life. And that comes with growth, and it's a great thing because it allows you to recognize that I can't be great at everything. But it also allows you to strengthen yourself and build a sense of acceptance, because acceptance is huge as well. But you really have to put that effort forward before you can say that, okay, I'm done with this. I could have plenty of times given up in UPT or in pilot training and been like, hey, this is too much. I've gone to 2-3 elimination rides at this point. I just can't do it anymore. And if I would have done that, I would not be in the position of where I am now. But with that being said, even though I was faced with the obstacle, I was faced with, okay, this is your last opportunity. We're going to kick you out potentially. I still made sure that I left everything on the table, and it turned around for me. So effort is key. Dedication is key. If you walk away from every opportunity that you feel is difficult because you think you may fail, you will live a life of regret. And ultimately that quote, or the saying that I say, failure without effort, is really about living a life with no regrets and remembering that, hey, I've done all that I can do for this situation.
I got one question for you.
Okay.
So I know Eric kind of brought up the question about, you know, how does the U.S. kind of prepare you for the airline, stuff like that. And obviously the U.S. flies differently than being in the airport.
Hey, you're breaking up. Travel one more time.
The UAS specifically, and kind of like it's lead into how that prepares you for the airlines, but what's it like flying in the airspace structure in a UAS compared to a normal plane, and how much of that do you do or not do? And I know there's restrictions with say drones being near manned aircraft as well.
Yeah, so we do operate, so it's kind of funny. In some aspects we operate very differently, in some aspects we operate similarly. So with that being said, UASs are still going through a process of being able to fully operate within the NAS, National Airspace System. However, when we need to talk about primarily where we operate. So the UAS, most of the time, even though there are guard units that will execute within the U.S. and also we'll do training within the U.S. as well, but primarily we're executing outside of the U.S. in Oconus, locations, and we're also operating in a environment where we're more likely at war. There are some locations where we operate where we're not. Example, Afghanistan. So we essentially control most of the airspace there for the tactical operations of UASs and anyone else that is actually over there operating on behalf of the military as well. So we do the normal, talking to ATC, we just may communicate with them differently. We still have radios that we can communicate with the controller to get clearance to the airspace, but we also have the capability, which we most of the time actually use, is just chat. Because we have multiple computer screens there, so we may request our airspace clearance via the chat function or platform there. As far as the execution in IFR or instrument flight rules, we most of the time stay away from that. Now, I have flown into clouds, but we don't have radar or any way to navigate through weather. So most of the time, it's really VFR flying. So the UAS system has what we call a soda straw look. So you're really just looking out. Even though it does swivel and you can pretty much look in all directions, you have a single field of view at one time that you can actually look at. So for that reason, that's why we generally stay in visual flight conditions, or VMC. For other parts, like I said, we have an LRE and also an MC function with the UAS system. So the LRE is going to do the takeoffs and landings. And then the other portion, which I actually executed, the MC teams will actually do the mission there. So that portion is a little different. For example, like I have never done a landing with the MQ9 or MQ1. So that was one thing that kind of fell off for me. I wasn't able to actually keep those skills of landing an aircraft, even though it would land slightly different. So I guess you call it skill atrophy. So kind of loses that piece. So getting back into flying for airlines, it was 4 or 5 years without flying that actual aircraft and doing takeoff and landings. It came a little difficult, but it came back quickly.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. There was one question in the chat function here just asking if I would come up to Elizabeth State, but I will definitely come up there and support in any way that I can because there's a UAS program there. Cool. Do you have any on Facebook questions over there on YouTube?
No, I don't have any on this side.
Okay.
We can probably start wrapping things up here shortly. If there's no more questions from the people in the chat and or Facebook. So yeah, for those watching on Facebook, I know it's in the comments there, but if you got any questions, feel free to drop them.
Just as we're kind of wrapping up here, the UAS community allows and provides great opportunity. That community, in my personal opinion, some people will say there are certain aspects of remotely piloting that just won't happen. But we have seen that this can be the wave of the future. With that being said, it can be very lucrative. It's a skill set that has potential to definitely keep you employed because in certain capacities, because there are also contract jobs doing similar portions of the UAS execution. They may not be actually dropping missiles and bombs due to obligation and status that they're in versus being military members versus being a contractor for the military. But that skill set could take you a long way and provide extended years of employment and also additional opportunities as well. So for me, even though this was not my #1 choice to go fly the UAS, I'll be 100% honest with you and tell you that I am so happy that I have this additional skill set now. That one day, honestly, me and my wife have actually discussed me potentially going back there and using those skills as well. So in short, just make sure that, just realize that it's not just all military. There is definitely need for this on the civilian contractor side as well. And I won't even get into discussion of whether Amazon or some of these companies will start using UASs because that's more debatable.
Cool. All right. Well, once again, thank you for coming out supporting Legacy Flight Academy. We appreciate you, your wisdom, your thoughts there. There's definitely so many things that I think a lot of us would echo, especially in lessons learned and stuff like that. For those of you out there that don't know about Legacy Flight Academy, we have our 3-tiered approach with Eyes Above the Horizon, P.A.R. events like this one, but usually during the recent events, we're doing them virtual like you see now. And then our Double Victory Flight program. Obviously, COVID has put a damper on a lot of those things, but all of our programs are 100% free. We get awesome people like this gentleman right here to help us out. So check us out at legacyflightacademy.org. We're always looking for donations to continue to do this thing and reach kids with aviation and stuff like that. Hope to see a lot of you all tomorrow when we do the next part of this series. It's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern time. We have Mr. Tymel Williams, who's a student pilot and a Part 107 drone operator and videographer. So this is more going to be on the civilian side as for UAS and that concern. And then coming up this Saturday is Legacy Flights Across America, at 12 p.m. Eastern. We're doing discovery flights, if you will, at 5 states across the nation. We're going to live stream it here on Zoom and on Facebook as well. So once again, thank you for doing this presentation. Thank you to Elizabeth City State University as well for letting us piggyback here, and hope to see you all tomorrow. Thanks.